Please give a warm welcome to Critics' Choice Award winner, Golden Globe Award winner, and Academy Award nominee for Best Actress, Demi Moore.
Thank you. Am I on? All right. Thank you so much. Wow.
How does that feel to be announced as Academy Award nominee?
Like, oh!
Congratulations on the Critics' Choice Award, Golden Globe.
Thank you.
Unbelievable.
Did everyone just see the film? Okay. How are you doing?
We had a 1% walkout, but,
Okay, 1%, we're doing okay.
it's not bad. I was struck when I watched the film about the fear of what other people think of not measuring up. Is that something that struck when you were reading the script?
Say that again. The fear of not measuring up, right? I think, when I read the script, I thought, wow, this is such a unique way to be delving into this subject matter. But the part that resonated the deepest was really that violence that we can have against ourselves, which is exactly what you just said. It's that judgment, it's that constant compare and despair. And I felt like that was something that I hadn't ever really seen explored, or a deep dive into what I think is just something that is so human, something that we all relate to.
That's actually what I was referring to.
I'm going to take my coat off. Is that
no,
okay?
of course.
Okay.
It's the film deals with not what people are doing to us, but what we're doing to ourselves.
Exactly.
And the scenes in the bathroom where you're facing yourself, I mean, you're utterly alone in the bathroom. There's no other people. It's just you looking at yourself and judging yourself.
I mean, that was, again, one of the very unique aspects to this particular script, but also Coralie Farget, her style of storytelling, which is very visual and symbolic. And to play a character where you don't have a lot of dialogue. And it was really important for me that I really invested and did a lot of work ahead of time so that I felt like I would be alive at all times, because I needed, in a sense, to be in dialogue with myself.
So the prep, you talked about the work that you did in advance. That sort of work, was it an emotional prep, internal prep?
Yeah, just kind of anchoring in. I mean, clearly my character has no friends or family. She has no kind of backstory. We don't know who she is, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And so even if it's not spoken about or referred to, for me, it was really important that it was alive in me, because the more grounded and real I could make her, the more relatable she would be.
You're remarkable in this film, and it just showcases the fact that we overlooked you, that we didn't value what you've done in the past. And I was struck when I was watching the film. I've seen it a few times. The scenes in the mirror where you're naked, those scenes are not about exploitative sexuality. It's about vulnerability.
Exactly.
Tell us about those.
I mean, I think
it must have been really difficult to.
Definitely not comfortable. But I think we have a very different experience when we're alone with ourselves in front of the mirror and when nobody else is watching. And what's interesting about that is our tendency, our kind of our human leaning is to not look in the mirror to look for what's right, but to look for what's wrong. And so part of this, is coming to that, which is what makes it so vulnerable and so painful, is that way in which we can dissect and find every little thing that we see as not good enough about ourselves. And we have, I think, a greater harshness when we're alone. Because the truth is, there is nothing that anybody could do to us that is worse than what we do to ourselves.
Which leads me to the unbelievable scene where the pre-date mirror scene, where
Yes.
you're looking at yourself and smearing your makeup, and the amount of emotions you show: grief, you show anger, self-loathing, violence against yourself. Was that all scripted? All those beats there, you run the gamut of emotions in that scene.
I think I think the circumstance was there. It was it the I think what's interesting in the movie is that it was one of the most important scenes because that's what really had to anchor it into reality. And going into it, I realized it's like Elizabeth has this sliver of hope, the possibility of breaking out of this self-imposed prison. And it's that hopefulness that totally gets degraded by the end to absolute self-loathing and self-destruction. And I think, it was really very specifically spelled out the beats of it, meaning just the physical beats of looking in the mirror, going and getting ready, trying to fix something, trying to just make it that much better, only to make it worse, seeing and comparing, and that's what was there. The emotional aspect was really kind of left to me to have to find that in me, the deepest parts of myself, and be willing to share that.
And the leap of faith that you took on this subject, and Coralie, now all of you are Academy Award nominated. She's nominated for Best Director, Best Screenplay. But what, were you horrified when you read the script and you understood
I mean,
the
I've
leap?
said it before. I read the script and I thought, wow, this is really amazing. Could be absolutely amazing. And it could be a fucking disaster. Because it's asking a lot. And I think the fine line of losing the depth of the aspect that was intense and serious and really, for lack of a better word, the substance by the crazy place it goes was something that I didn't know. Is this going to work? I mean, very similar for me when I read Ghost. I thought, wow, okay, this is a comedy, a romance, and a thriller. I don't know how this is going to work. But if it does, it could have an incredible impact. And that's exactly how I felt when I read The Substance. And in truth, the moment I read the script where my back opens and another entity comes out, I was hooked. I was like, okay, I'm in.
There's one question I've been dying to ask you, is the fact that Sue is giving a new life. Your character is giving a new life, but then she chooses the same path.
I love that you see that.
And why?
I mean, I think that again is really reflective of how our human behavior is. We continue to repeat patterns until we change them. It's a very subtle part of this where she gets that second chance. And instead of going, hey, how about I'm going to start my own show? No, she seeks the same validation. I mean, how many times have we chosen the same relationship over and over again? I mean, same dance, different partner, but it's a very similar thing.
Which leads me, I've adored you since the 80s, but I felt that no role actually lived up to your talents. And now you've taken this chance. You went against the Sue paradigm. How does that feel to like finally find something that showcases to the best advantage, all your talent?
I mean, look, we can only be as good as the opportunity we're given. And so I'm really grateful that I had this material come my way, that I really felt had everything that I tend to look for, which is that it had the potential to be meaningful and memorable, that it pushed me out of my comfort zone, that not only did it give me a chance to grow as an artist, but as a person. And, and I think the real blessing on top of it all is that this also represented something that had the potential to create a real cultural shift in how we hold ourselves, because that is the ultimate message in this, which is self-acceptance and self-love.
Thank you. I want to follow up with questions about your career, but based on what you said. But I do have a quirky question to ask you about the coat that she wears, the yellow coat. It feels like she's like a superhero with this coat.
I never quite thought of it that way. But the coat, again, is very symbolic. It's very in keeping with, the way in which Coralie envisions and excuse me. But I've never quite thought of it as a superhero, but you're kind of right. It's very bold. It's very bright. It's very identifiable. I have the coat, by the way.
Okay, and you're going to keep it because it's iconic.
Yes.
But you, tagging on to the fact that they're all, Coralie works very metaphorically, and it's all symbols. As you were working with her through all of this, did she feed you the meaning of everything that was happening?
Not always, but I think it was, I felt like each beat for her was very grounding. If you notice, like I'm in blue and Sue is in pink. The coat, really was this kind of, in a way, it was the constant amongst as I degraded, it's the one thing that stayed the same. And why, you would have to ask her exactly what it was, but I know that it's had an incredible resonance and impact. I mean, we saw it in Halloween costumes, we've seen it in memes, we've seen it. So there's something about it that has had a lasting impact and a very identifiable element to it. And I think color was very important, but I don't know why she chose the yellow.
And the window that you stare at is actually pretty poignant. The fact that she makes you look at the window and it refers to the past, and then Sue looks at the window and looks like the future. Was that something that you guys discussed, or?
No, she didn't think of it. I mean, I think she saw it. Like again, it was representing that, but it was in a way kind of the perspective of loss. I think everything was really about loss in a sense. Which the interesting thing is that view that you see out that window is a photograph. We were shooting in Paris, so
Pretending to be in Los Angeles.
yes.
How did you feel those scenes with Dennis Quaid, that he's eating the shrimp and he's basically saying,
By far.
and he's basically saying you're done as an actress?
So let's just start with the shrimp. Because by far for me, that is the most violent scene in the movie.
It's horrifying.
Sitting across from him, where he so relished every bite, he went through 4 pounds. And he did it with such zeal, and it was so disgusting. So disgusting, but impactful. I mean, the metaphor, once again, of him tearing the heads off and the juice and the sound.
And he's basically saying you're done. Yeah, you're no use to me. And little did we know, revenge. Here you are. During the festival, we've been showing a retrospective of your films. People have been watching Indecent Proposal, Ghost, etc. I do want to ask you the connection, the importance of a film like Ghost in your career, and now this film. That, I mean, it was ahead of its time 1990, you're dealing with loss and death. And it's a highly entertaining film like this one, but it was dealing with heavy subjects.
And yes, and the supernatural in a way that we have a much more open dialogue about afterlife today, but we certainly didn't then. Yeah.
And also, there's a level of vulnerability that was asked from you as an actress. I mean, you were so emotional in it. What was it like looking back at?
Do you know, it's so interesting. Just a few weeks ago, I realized that my youngest daughter and her fiance had never seen the movie. And I realized I hadn't looked at it in over 35 years. And so they kind of pushed me to sit down and watch, which I was absolutely against. And then I did give in and go watch the second half of it for the first time in 35 years, which was quite interesting. And I realized, I don't think while I was shooting it, I didn't realize the depth of grief that I was having to kind of tap into to bring up. I don't think I was conscious of accessing that until I watched it back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to get emotional telling you that when my dad passed away 6 years ago, my mom watched the film and she found so much comfort in the idea of dealing with loss and death in the film that you created.
I mean, I think that was the beautiful added gift in this, is that it actually took something of great loss and brought incredible hope. And to know that while the physical may be gone, that the connection is never lost.
Thank you. Then I want to ask you about 1992, A Few Good Men. Following, in 1991, you did the Vanity Fair cover, which was revolutionary. And then you follow it with A Few Good Men, and remarkable dialogue by Aaron Sorkin, and the fact that you did not romanticize your relationship with Tom, which was quite revolutionary.
I mean, I think at that time, I really, have to give my incredible thanks to Rob Reiner and Aaron Sorkin, because they really stood up to the studio to really take a stand that the relationship was better than needing to have it devolve into something romantic because it was Tom Cruise and myself. And they did come up against some opposition, which I found out much later. Aaron Sorkin shared a story of a studio executive basically saying, then if there was going to be no love scene, then why did they have Demi Moore? It was the 90s. It's the 90s. But to their credit, I think they saw that there was greater value in the relationship between these two characters, not needing to go there. It didn't need it. It didn't need it. It was better than that.
Mm-hmm. Then, thank you. Then you follow that up with Indecent Proposal in 1993. And you had so many sex scenes in that movie, but it never felt exploitative. It was always moving the character and the situation forward. What was it like for you to work through all those scenes?
I mean, it's always a very vulnerable experience. I mean, love scenes are awkward. And because you're having to step in and create intimacy with someone that you don't know and do not have necessarily physical intimacy with. But the thing is I really trusted within the story that it was a part of telling the story, that the love scenes were, again, they weren't exploitive. They were a part of building the connection of the relationship of these two people. And, on the other side of it, I was able to come to an agreement with Adrian Lyne that we would be open to shoot the scenes freely, and he would allow me to see what he edited together. And if there was anything that felt too much, he would make adjustments. And in the end, I changed nothing. And by him trusting me, it allowed me to also trust him and to give more of myself without the fear and without it being like, oh, this much nip, this much butt.
But why, how did you compare that relationship with Coralie, which you have had to have had so much trust in her?
They really were so completely different. I knew that, again, the only thing that was really this similar is that the nudity was an important part of telling the story because it was about being exposed, being vulnerable, it being raw. And I knew that it wasn't about being compromised in a way that that it was just a part of helping tell the story. Now, as the actor stepping into that, it's you still have your own process of being seen and what that is. But part of stepping out of my comfort zone to take on this role was being willing to really go all in, knowing that this wasn't going to be the most glamorous shoot, that it was in fact probably going to be highlighting even more of the things that I would prefer people not see at angles that were not the most attractive. And at the end of the day, that was incredibly liberating for me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. In 1997, 96, you did G.I. Jane and Striptease. And I saw the film, both films recently, and people were so harsh to those films because I feel maybe they were betraying expectations, but both films are ahead of its time with what it had to say. How do you feel about looking back about those two films?
I feel proud of both.
They're terrific.
And I feel in particular there was the external circumstances that was very heightened in the media about becoming the highest paid actress that very much colored the perception and openness to really see the films for the film's sake. And in particular for G.I. Jane, they were really ready to take that one down. But, I also really believe everything in its right time. And you know what? Maybe it not being seen and appreciated then is actually bringing this very moment a greater depth of being seen and appreciated that is more important than if it had been completely valued in its fullest then.
Wow. Wow. I'm thinking in particular, thank you. I'm thinking in particular of the scene where all the men are, they're jumping through the what do you call it? The
Over the wall?
Yeah, the wall.
Like the obstacle course?
The obstacle course, and they're all jumping
On my
your
back.
on your back, on your shoulders. It's such a powerful visual. Then people would have gone, okay, it's just another officer in the gentle. But now it's like, here's this actress that's putting up with all these men jumping on top of her.
I had a boot-shaped bruise on my back when we got done with that.
And you didn't complain to the powers that be.
You don't sign up for that if you're not really willing to go and really go completely all in. You don't. I mean, or why? Why torture yourself?
And then,
But sorry, what was your question
No,
about?
like, I was just amazed about that scene in the 1990s. Like today, we'll have a different perspective. But then, yeah, it was just.
You mean about? But I think again, I think the film. I have had a tendency to gravitate towards roles that are provocative, and not necessarily. I don't mean sexually, but meaning that provoke thought, provoke conversation, that challenge a certain status quo. And I was really captivated with G.I. Jane and this idea of why shouldn't a woman be in combat if it's where she wants to be, if she's good at it? Why wouldn't we want them there? And what's the issue? And I really do also think the film was really posing a question that the bigger world wasn't quite ready for. And I think with striptease, since those kind of came back to back, for me, that wasn't a story about a stripper, an exotic dancer. It was about a mother doing what it takes to survive for her child. And I think the idea that I was playing a woman whose profession included taking her clothes off publicly was also something that people weren't quite ready to really see the humanity in. And that's why I'm so happy to see Honora
Nora,
and
yes.
to see what's happening with Mikey Madison and seeing her really, being acknowledged, because it was such a brave thing she did,
Yeah.
which just tells me that we have come a long way.
Well, and it's taken this long for people to acknowledge your talent. Yeah, and rightly so. What happened after that period? Because you took a backseat, or maybe Hollywood took a backseat after Striptease and G.I. Jane.
Well, actually, I kind of stepped back. I had some personal things in my life. My marriage to my children's father was ending. My mother passed away, and I realized that my focus needed to be with my children. So I stepped away for almost 6 years just to be with them. And I didn't think of it as like my career's ending or I'll never work again. It was really just that was just more important, and that whatever else I would figure it out.
And then you did Charlie's Angels, where you play your first villain.
I did play a villain. Well, actually, kind of my
Mar-
second villain, because disclosure, I'm kind of a
Disclosure, you were a
villain
bit
because
of a
it
villain.
was also a film slightly challenging the norm, which is that I was the sexual predator.
Correct.
I'm not.
But what was it like for you to play the villain in a major film?
I have to say there was a moment that was like a little uncomfortable because, it brings up like I want to be the one everyone likes. But it was kind of delicious. It was kind of delicious.
In what way?
I think when you are stepping into characters who don't play by the rules, you get the permission to not play by the rules. And so there's something kind of really fun to not be bound by the things that we generally live by. And
And does that speak about Elizabeth Sparkle?
I think Elizabeth is much more tragic. She is a much more tragic soul because for me, she represented that part that does exist in all of us, that is chasing everything that's on the outside, that's seeking validation and love and approval only from the external, when no matter what we try to do, that answer will never come from the outside. It can only come from the inside, which is, thank you, which is why that scene in the mirror getting ready is so painful, because no matter what she tries to do to fix, to put a scarf on, to change the lipstick, the problem isn't on the outside. It's that she's lacking love and appreciation, acceptance, and forgiveness on the inside.
And what do you make of the last scene? I find so much validation and excitement by the fact that, this monster is saying, this is who I am. Fuck you.
I mean, it's very interesting and strikes different people in different ways. I think there is an interesting aspect to, again, in a way, the liberation within this kind of transformation, degradation of becoming on the outside everything that is the greatest fear, but only to actually almost have a sweetness of really being seen. I mean, it's very heartbreaking when she's saying, no, but it's still me. It's still me. And I think it's maybe one of the only times that is like it's Monster Eliza Sue's most human moment.
Correct. What has been to me so beautiful about what's happened to you, and it reflects on us as an audience, is that you meant so much to us as an audience for so many years, but then we took you for granted. And then all of a sudden, you've come around and shown us that you're still vital, you're amazing, and you deserve far more of our love than we've ever given you. And so it's amazing. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. I mean, I just want to. I so appreciate that reflection, and it's a lot to take in, and but I just want to say, you know, what I have come to realize is that nobody can throw you under the bus unless you've thrown yourself under the bus. People can't appreciate you unless you appreciate yourself.
Correct.
And when you hold and value yourself for all that you are, as you are, in whatever moment that is, then the rest of the world will follow. It doesn't go the other way around.
So sweet.
And so I don't know if I was ready. Maybe I just wasn't ready yet to hold all that I am until this very moment.
Wow.
And so I'm just grateful that that reflection is being reflected back to me. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.